Good evening, dear listener. Find a cozy spot, perhaps adjust your blanket just a little, sip a soothing cup of tea, or gently rest your head against your pillow. Take a deep breath, slow and steady, as if you're drawing in the calmness of a quiet night. Let your muscles relax, surrendering to the soft embrace of the darkness around you. Tonight, I invite you to settle into a world that feels both ancient and oddly familiar, like a distant dream that whispers secrets only the night can keep. Imagine for a moment a place where the walls are carved from time itself, and the echoes of forgotten voices linger like shadows in the corners. It's a world where scribbles on clay tablets hold the keys to knowledge, yet somehow the classroom itself feels more like a mystery waiting to be unraveled, like trying to read a message in a bottle washed ashore after a long voyage. And as you drift closer to sleep, picture yourself slipping through a veil of mist where the scent of dried herbs mingles with a faint hum of voices from a long-ago era. The air is thick with whispers of stories, of lessons learned under flickering lamps, of scribbles and symbols that once defined a civilization's soul. Soon your eyes will flutter open, not in the comfort of your familiar room, but in a world where the air is tinged with the scent of ancient scrolls and the shadows dance softly on cracked walls, a place where education is woven with magic and mystery, and your role is about to become something far stranger than you ever imagined. Your bed, if you can call it that, is a rough cot made of woven reeds and frayed cloth, the kind that scratches your skin just enough to remind you it's not designed for comfort. The air is damp, carrying a faint scent of dried herbs and something else, perhaps the lingering aroma of burnt offerings or the sweat of those nearby. Your nose twitches at the mixture, a strange cocktail of earth and smoke that seems to settle into every breath you take. Your body protests as you shift, your skin rubbing against coarse linen garments that hang stiff and scratchy, dampened by the night's moisture. The floor beneath you is cold and uneven, a patchwork of mud bricks and splintered wood, each step sending a tiny shiver up your spine. You lift your hand to your face, and the roughness of the fabric against your fingertips reminds you that comfort is a foreign concept here. The textures are raw, unrefined, nothing like the soft, cozy sheets and memory foam mattresses you're used to. Instead, it's like sleeping on a bed made of stones with a thin layer of straw on top. Your ears are filled with a symphony of sounds, distant bells ringing, perhaps signaling the start of a new day or a call to prayer. Somewhere nearby, a sickly groan echoes through a narrow alley, mingling with the clatter of metal tools hammering in the blacksmith's shop and the muffled voices of merchants bargaining in a language that feels both strange and familiar. The sharp cry of a child chasing a stray goat pierces the air, while a stray dog barks fiercely at an approaching cart. Every sound seems to pulse with life, chaos, and purpose. The scent hits you next, a pungent blend of burning herbs, sour wine, and the faint, nauseating odor of rotting meat from the market stalls. You almost want to turn away, but your senses are caught in this vivid tapestry, woven from smells so strong they seem to seep into your bones. Your tongue tastes a faint, metallic tang, perhaps from the water you drank earlier, cloudy, tepid, with a flavor that's more dirt than refreshment. You realize you're thirsty, painfully so, yet you know that water here often carries its own secrets. Your hands instinctively search for your clothes, stiff, rough, and slightly damp, clinging to your skin with a stubbornness that's almost humorous. You reach out and find your robe, a simple tunic woven from coarse wool, stiff and scratchy against your palms. As you pull it over your head, the fabric catches on your skin, reminding you that comfort is a luxury you've long given up. The sensation of the rough fibers brushing your neck makes you chuckle softly. Your idea of a bad morning used to be forgetting your phone charger. Here, it's realizing your mask smells worse than the patients you're supposed to help. With a deep, deliberate breath, you rise to your feet bare on the uneven floor. You feel the coolness of the stones beneath your soles, each step a reminder that here, mobility is a balancing act between the dirt, the sharp edges, and the weight of your responsibilities. You reach for a small, cracked vessel on the nearby table, splashing some tepid water onto your face. The water's texture is gritty, and it leaves a faint film on your skin, a reminder that cleanliness is a daily battle. You swallow the bitter liquid, trying to wash away the remnants of sleep and the strange disorientation that lingers. As you step outside, the scene opens before you, a bustling, vibrant village or a sprawling city, depending on where you find yourself. Narrow streets wind between mud brick buildings, their walls cracked and faded, painted with faded murals or simple geometric patterns. People move with purpose, merchants shouting their wares, children darting past, soldiers patrolling, and priests in flowing robes murmuring prayers as they walk past. Everyone here seems to wear their roles like a second skin, some with reverence, others with a quiet wariness. The villagers glance at you, some with curiosity, others with a mix of respect and apprehension. Your presence, clad in that strange, perhaps slightly intimidating mask, commands attention without a word. You notice the marketplace opening up, a chaotic scene of vendors offering dried dates, fragrant bread, and jars of mysterious substances. The air is thick with the scent of spices and sweat, a lively testament to the daily rhythm of life. Children run past, their voices a lively chorus that contrasts sharply with the solemn faces of the elders. Somewhere, a blacksmith's hammer strikes rhythmically, echoing through the streets like a heartbeat. Here and there, a guard's spear glints in the sunlight, and a priest's voice rises in prayer, blending into the background like a familiar hum. And as you take it all in, the sights, sounds, smells, you begin to realize this is not your time at all. The world around you pulses with a vitality that feels both ancient and oddly immediate. You're caught in a web of rituals, routines, and stories that stretch back thousands of years, woven into the very fabric of this place. To truly understand where you've just woken up, you need to step back, to see the larger picture, a landscape shaped by history, belief, and a way of life that's both mesmerizing and strange. So take a moment, feel the weight of the air, the roughness of your surroundings, the hum of life around you. Because soon you'll find yourself fully immersed in a world where education isn't just learning, it's survival, storytelling, and magic all at once. And your journey into the heart of this ancient civilization is about to begin. It's the dawn of what many call the first civilization, a sprawling network of city-states, ziggurats reaching toward the heavens, and bustling marketplaces that would make even the busiest modern shopping district seem quiet by comparison. This is roughly set in the late 3rd millennium BCE, during the height of the Sumerian, Akkadian, and later Babylonian empires, an era when the wheels of history turned with the relentless rhythm of the Tigris and Euphrates. Imagine a world where kings and priests hold sway, where scribes carve stories into clay tablets, and where the very fabric of society is stitched together with rituals, wars, and a dash of superstition that would make your most eccentric beliefs look downright rational. In this ancient landscape, society is a complex mosaic. At the top sit the nobles, Those who own the land, command armies, and enjoy a life of relative luxury, with their houses built from sun-dried bricks and decorated with frescoes of gods and heroes. Below them, the priests rule not only spiritually but often politically, their temples the true centers of power, wielding influence that stretches beyond divine authority into the realm of politics and economics. Merchants, those daring traders, navigate an economy that's as lively as a modern stock exchange, but with more camels and less digital screens. Then there are the farmers and laborers working tirelessly on the banks of the great rivers, their lives dictated by the seasons, the floods, and the whims of the gods. Rigid class distinctions mark the social landscape. Wealth and privilege are concentrated at the top, while the majority scrape by, their fortunes often determined by luck, local alliances, or the favor of deities whose names are whispered in prayers and curses alike. The contrast between the wealthy and the poor couldn't be starker. Nobles dwell in grand palaces with tiled courtyards and lush gardens, while the common folk sleep on mats spread over packed earth in crowded quarters. A merchant's stall might overflow with fine fabrics and gold trinkets, while a laborer's hut is a humble, sun-baked shelter, barely enough to keep out the dust and the chill of night. Power here is a fragile thing. Who commands, who obeys, and who simply survives are questions answered more often by strength, cunning, or divine favor than by fairness or justice. The streets are a constant blur of activity, donkeys braying, children shouting, artisans hammering away at their craft, and street performers trying to catch the attention of passers-by with songs or strange tricks. The environment itself is an ever-present character, vast, arid plains stretching beyond the city walls, punctuated by the mighty rivers that serve as both life-givers and killers. The riverbanks are lined with reed huts and busy docks where boats laden with grain, textiles and clay pots come and go, like giant wooden veins pulsing with commerce. The marketplaces are lively, chaotic places, more vibrant than Black Friday, but with more pigs than people and vendors shouting over each other in a language that sounds like a melodic scramble of syllables. The air is thick with the scent of roasted fish, burnt incense, and the occasional waft of fresh bread, and of course, the ever-present aroma of sweat and dust. Your day begins at the crack of dawn, probably with the crowing of roosters or the tolling of temple bells, depending on your station. You might spend hours tending fields, writing cuneiform on clay tablets, or assisting in the temple rituals that keep the gods appeased. Life is cyclical, repetitive, yet filled with small moments of wonder, like the strange ritual of bathing, which in this age is almost a secret act. Taking a bath isn't just about cleanliness, it's a subtle declaration of trust, almost like revealing a secret or signaling that you're up to something clandestine. The water is often tepid, sometimes murky, and rarely pure enough to satisfy modern sensibilities. In fact, cleanliness here is more about ritual than hygiene, an act of devotion or superstition rather than a daily necessity. Your routines are punctuated by festivals and religious ceremonies, massive gatherings where priests chant hymns, offerings are made, and the sky seems to shimmer with the collective hope that the gods are listening. These moments can be as elaborate as a royal procession or as simple as lighting a small oil lamp in your home, but they are woven into the very fabric of everyday life. In some ways, your world resembles a giant theatre, full of rituals, roles, and stories passed down through generations with everyone playing their part, knowingly or not. Now it's tempting to think that life back then was simpler or more primitive than today, but that's only surface deep. Your frustrations with technology are nothing compared to the challenge of lighting a fire on a damp morning or keeping a clay tablet from cracking under your stylus. Forget gyms, carrying water from the river, hauling firewood, or pounding grain was the medieval equivalent of CrossFit, only with more dirt and less motivation. And the superstitions? Well, some believed that carrying a handful of onions in your pocket could ward off the plague. Talk about organic medicine. Others swore that sniffing flowers soaked in vinegar was a safer way to keep sickness at bay, which might explain why masks in this era looked more like strange floral headgear than protective gear. Politically, this was a world of city-states with their own kings, often united by shared language and religion, but frequently at odds, warring over territory, resources, or divine favor. The kings and priests ruled with a mix of divine right and raw power, often backed by armies of soldiers and bureaucrats. Warfare was routine, sometimes brutal, and often driven by the desire to capture more land or treasure. Meanwhile, epidemics and invasions came and went, sometimes wiping out whole communities, other times just stirring the pot of unrest. Religion was the backbone of everything, every decision, every war, every harvest, all viewed through the lens of divine will. Superstitions ran deep, and many believed that omens, dreams, and strange signs shaped the course of history. And just in case you thought this was all too serious, here's a fun fact. Some believed that carrying a handful of onions in your pocket could ward off the plague. Talk about organic medicine. Others swore that sniffing flowers soaked in vinegar was a safer way to keep sickness at bay, which might explain why masks in this era looked more like strange floral headgear than protective gear. Life in Mesopotamia was a constant dance between chaos and order, magic and reason, all wrapped up in the dust and dreams of a civilization that laid the foundations of everything we know today. Now that you've gotten a taste of the macro, of empires rising and falling, gods being appeased, and the endless hustle of city life, let's zoom in a little closer. Because the real story begins with the day-to-day routines, the small acts of survival, and the simple yet profound ways life was lived in this ancient world. Enough about kings, priests, and plagues. Let's see what happens when you try to wash your face here. You wake up as the first light filters through the narrow cracks of your home, perhaps a simple clay or mud brick hut, its walls darkened by smoke and age. The air is thick with the scent of dampness, baked earth, and the faint aroma of burned herbs. You stretch your limbs, feeling the stiffness that comes from sleeping on a simple mat laid over rough, uneven stones or packed dirt. Your muscles protest with a gentle ache, as if reminding you that comfort is a luxury reserved for stories you've only heard about in reveries. Before you do anything else, you reach for a small basin of water, cold, murky, and stored in a wooden or clay vessel that's seen better days. You dip your hands into it, the water feeling like a slap of reality, faintly slimy from the dust and lingering oils on your skin. Splashing water on your face, you notice how the cold stings, awakening every nerve ending, while your reflection, if you dare peek, reveals a face streaked with dirt and perhaps a little soot from the fire. No fancy soap here, just water, maybe a pinch of salt or vinegar to cut through the grime, and perhaps a worn cloth or rag to scrub a bit. Forget your 10-step skincare routine. Here, survival is splashing some water and hoping the smell doesn't scare the neighbors. You might even dab a handful of dried herbs or aromatic leaves on your neck or wrists, believing that a whiff of thyme or mint can purify the air around you. An ancient version of an essential oil diffuser, if you will. Inside your home, things are simple but functional. Walls made of sun-baked mud bricks darkened by years of smoke hold up a roof of woven reeds or rough wood beams. The floors are packed dirt, sometimes sprinkled with straw to soften your footsteps. You hear the crackle of a small fire in a clay hearth, the faint aroma of burning wood mixed with the scent of roasted grains or dried fish drying by the side. Utensils are modest, clay pots stained from countless uses, wooden spoons and woven baskets. The furniture? A rough wooden stool, perhaps a low table, and woven mats or animal skins to sit on. Everything smells of smoke and earth, and the textures are coarse, unrefined, rough wood against your fingertips, the scratchy weave of your tunic, the stiff leather of your sandals. Your clothes are heavy, woven from coarse wool or linen, thick enough to make you feel like you're hugging a hedgehog. The fabric irritates your skin, and your body reacts with a few itchy spots or a shiver from the cold. Modern comfort, non-existent. Your idea of a scratchy sweater might be a gentle hug compared to the wool that feels like it's trying to crawl away from your body. As you prepare to face the day, you munch on your first meal, if you can call it that. Perhaps a piece of stale bread, its crust hard as stone, paired with a slice of aged cheese that's been cured to the point of almost being a fossil. Maybe a thin bowl of broth, watery and flavorless, like sipping on a cloud of warm air, tinged with a hint of salt and whatever herbs you have on hand, dill, coriander, or a sprig of mint if you're lucky. Eating here isn't about flavor, it's about sustenance, about filling your belly enough to keep moving. Drinking, likely from a clay cup, the water tasting faintly of minerals, sometimes a bit sour if the jar has been sitting in the sun a little too long. You might brush your teeth with a rough twig or chew on aromatic herbs to freshen your breath, though honestly, fresh breath isn't exactly a priority when your neighbors probably smell you before they see you. Hygiene rituals extend beyond just washing your face. Many believe that cleanliness is more about spiritual purity than physical hygiene, so you might carry around charms, amulets, or small figurines carved from stone or clay, thought to ward off sickness or evil spirits. Before leaving your home, you might say a quick prayer, lighting a small piece of incense or fragrant herbs over a censer, smoke curling up like a prayer to the gods, hoping they're paying attention. Some folks might even perform a ritual splash of vinegar or sprinkled herbs on themselves, believing it will keep away disease. And of course, a few might tie a small amulet around their neck or wrist, tiny objects believed to protect against illness, as if a charm alone could ward off the chaos of life. All of this, your morning routines, the textures, the smells, the simple objects, feels like a slow dance with survival. You get dressed in your heavy, scratchy garments, feeling the coarse fabric rub against your skin, reminding you that comfort is a foreign concept. Your body reacts with a mixture of discomfort and resilience, stiff limbs, a lingering chill, and the ever-present itch of dust and sweat. It's a far cry from your modern-day shower or skincare routine, but it's what you have, and somehow it's enough. You step out into your home's small courtyard or into the narrow street, ready to face what the day may bring. Whether it's the labor of tending fields, helping in the marketplace, or just navigating the busy, dusty corridors of your city. And as you do, you realize that despite the lack of modern conveniences, there's a strange comfort in these routines, an ancient rhythm that keeps life moving, one splash of water, one prayer, one moment of resilience at a time. The ground beneath your feet is uneven, a mosaic of cracked stones, packed dirt, and patches of muddy clay, depending on where you're walking. Your sturdy cloak or tunic, perhaps a bit damp from the night's chill, rustles as you move, carrying the scent of dried herbs and the faint, lingering smell of yesterday's fires. As you leave the quiet of your home, the bustling life of the city or village begins to stir. People already moving with purpose, their footsteps echoing on the uneven streets, their voices rising in a cacophony of greetings, negotiations, and the occasional shout from a merchant setting up his stall. Your face is partially concealed beneath a mask or a hood, perhaps a simple cloth tied around your head, or a more elaborate leather covering, depending on your role. If you're a healer or a priest, you might carry a small bag of herbs, a staff, or a carved amulet, objects that mark your function and command a mixture of respect and wariness from those around you. Children stare at you, eyes wide with curiosity, some clutching their mother's skirts, others giggling behind their hands. Adults nod politely, though some cast cautious glances, their expressions a mix of hope and suspicion. The community's perception of you is layered, respect intertwined with a dash of fear, because in this world your role is as much about managing danger as about performing your duties. You make your way toward the place where your work begins. Maybe it's a market filled with a riot of colors, the bright reds of pomegranates, the deep browns of dried dates, the shimmering gold of finely woven fabrics. Or perhaps it's a temple courtyard, the air thick with incense smoke and the rhythmic clang of metal on stone as artisans craft offerings or repair sacred statues. The streets are alive, merchants shouting prices, soldiers patrolling with spears glinting in the sun, laborers hauling baskets of grain or bricks, and priests moving solemnly in procession, their robes swaying with each step. The sounds of daily life blend into a constant hum, clattering, chattering, and the occasional bray of donkeys or bleats of sheep. Your role is clear, whether you're a healer tending to the sick, a craftsman forging tools, or a priest performing rituals. Your presence is always marked by a sense of purpose. You navigate through this chaos, performing your duties amid the sensory overload of smells, sights, and sounds. Perhaps you're called to visit a sick household where the faint scent of herbs and vinegar fills the air as you examine a feverish child or a coughing elder. You might burn a handful of aromatic herbs to purify a space, or sprinkle a mixture of crushed garlic and salt around a sickbed, believing it will ward off evil spirits or disease. The work is relentless, often repetitive, and physically demanding. You might spend hours kneeling on the cold, rough stones, applying poultices made from crushed herbs, or carefully burning the clothes of a patient to prevent contagion, an act that feels both symbolic and practical, as if the fabric itself carries the illness. Your hands are used to the textures of your craft, rough, calloused from years of labor, yet gentle enough to handle fragile clay or delicate scrolls. You might feel the heat of the fire or the coolness of the water you splash on a fevered brow. You learn to read the signs of health and sickness in the subtle shifts of a patient's face, the color of their tongue, or the strength of their pulse. And all the while, you're aware of the layers of superstition that surround your work. Some believe that carrying a carved amulet or reciting a prayer while tending to the sick can tip the balance in their favor. Others think that lighting a special incense, perhaps cedar or myrrh, will draw divine healing energies into the room. You might even perform a small ritual like sprinkling water in a certain pattern or muttering an incantation, all part of the complex dance of medicine and magic that defines your world. The community observes your work with a mixture of reverence and skepticism. Children watch with wide eyes, whispering about the strange herbs and the doctor's magic, while elders nod knowingly, perhaps recalling their own encounters with healers or priests. Merchants and farmers might give you a wide berth, wary of the contagion, or they may seek your aid, offering a token or a small gift in exchange. Soldiers and officials come and go, their armor clanking as they check in on the health of their comrades or oversee the city's defenses. Every interaction is a delicate balance: respect, fear, a hint of superstition, and a shared hope that your work will bring relief or protection. And behind all this, the rhythm of the city or village beats on, markets bustling with activity, religious festivals drawing crowds, or perhaps a solemn procession winding through the streets. Life here is a constant cycle of labor, ritual, and community, each person playing their part in the grand, interconnected story of survival. The air is filled with a complex mixture of smells: dried herbs, sweat, smoke, and the faint sweetness of offerings, while the sounds of daily toil echo endlessly. Your role, humble or exalted, is woven into this fabric, shaping the health and hope of everyone around you. But as you move through this vibrant, chaotic scene, you might feel a quiet, almost humorous contrast with your modern life. Your office is a simple hut or a corner of the street. Your tools are herbs, stones, and maybe a piece of clay. And your tech support involves reciting ancient spells or burning fragrant sticks. Your backlog isn't a pile of unread emails, but a line of patients waiting outside your door, coughing and wheezing, each one a reminder that in this world the battle for health is fought with shovels, herbs, and a whole lot of faith. And in some ways that's perfectly okay, because in this age, life is about more than convenience. It's about resilience, faith, and the timeless dance between what we can see and what we must believe. Now, with your role clear and your purpose set, it's time to prepare for the next chapter, when you'll face the deeper fears, superstitions, and beliefs that shape this ancient society's understanding of the world and their place within it. You feel it in the way the air seems thicker when you step into the streets, an almost palpable heaviness that clings to every corner, every alley, like an unseen fog made of fears. It's a presence that lurks in the way people stare past you, eyes darting nervously, whispering prayers under their breath as you pass by, an instinctive gesture to ward off the unseen, the unknowable. You notice how the churches are packed, their stone walls echoing with the hum of voices praying in unison, pleading for mercy from the gods they believe control every breath, every heartbeat. The tolling of bells signals funerals, each chime a reminder that death is never far, always waiting just beyond the next street corner, just behind the flickering shadows of flickering lamps. The streets are silent when they need to be, filled with an oppressive hush that feels like a collective holding of breath, a community holding itself together with faith and fear intertwined. In this world, faith isn't just a spiritual act, it's part of your daily survival. You see people crossing themselves before stepping into a marketplace, whispering silent prayers for safe passage. Before a meal, they recite blessings, their voices blending with the crackling of incense sticks that fill the air with sweet, pungent smoke, smoke that seems to dance upward like prayers ascending to the heavens. Women light candles in front of saints' images, their flickering flames casting shadows that flicker like spirits lurking just out of sight. Monks chant in the monasteries, their voices rising and falling in ancient melodies that seem to echo through the very stones of the city, creating an almost hypnotic rhythm of hope and dread. Today, you might scroll through endless videos for comfort, or scroll memes to distract yourself. But here, people clutch rosaries as if they were life jackets in a storm, tiny, sacred objects that promise protection against the invisible horrors lurking in the air. Superstitions shape daily life, an invisible armor against the chaos. You see amulets worn around necks carved with symbols of protection, some with the images of gods, others with strange glyphs that only the initiated understand. People carry strange objects in their pockets, perhaps a dried toad, believed to ward off the plague, or a small bag of herbs, thought to repel spirits or sickness. Some believe that hanging a shell or a piece of bone in the doorway keeps evil spirits away, while others walk around spitting on the ground at regular intervals, a ritual to rid oneself of bad luck. The streets are filled with odd sights, mourners beating themselves with whips, hoping to earn divine mercy, or women singing lullabies to keep spirits at bay. The air is thick with the smell of burnt offerings, incense, and the pungent scent of herbs meant to purify spaces, each smell a prayer, a plea, a ritual. It's the medieval version of essential oils, except with a slightly higher chance of accidental poisoning. Yet everyone swears by these strange cures. And the fears are collective, woven into the fabric of community life. The threat of the plague hangs over everyone, like a dark cloud ready to burst at any moment, spreading from whispered rumors or the sight of someone coughing too much. People are paranoid, fearing not only the disease, but also the wrath of divine punishment. You see it in the way families barricade themselves inside their homes when someone shows signs of illness, or how entire neighborhoods turn against the accused, quick to lynch or exile what they see as sources of evil. Accusations of witchcraft or heresy fly as easily as arrows. An unwelcome cough might be enough to condemn a person to exile or worse. Fleeing the city in panic becomes a common scene. Crowds stampede, clutching possessions, eyes wide with terror, as if the very act of running could outrun the wrath of the gods or the invisible sickness. The community lives in a state of constant alert. Every shadow could hide a demon, every cough a sign of the end. As a healer or priest, you are caught right in the middle of this storm of fears. The villagers look at you with a mixture of hope and suspicion. Some see you as a divine conduit, a savior who can banish their suffering. Others see you as part of the problem, perhaps an accomplice to the divine punishment, or even the source of the sickness itself. Children clutch their mothers' skirts as you approach, eyes wide with a mixture of awe and terror. Elders nod solemnly, pressing their hands together in prayer, or offering small tokens of thanks or curses depending on how well you perform your duties. Your presence is always a delicate dance. Some whisper that your herbs and prayers can save lives, while others mutter darkly that you might be inadvertently spreading the disease through your touch. You catch the wary glances, furtive whispers, quick prayers whispered in your direction, the quick crossing of oneself when you pass. Some people see you as a potential salvation, an instrument of divine mercy, while others regard you with outright suspicion, as if your very presence might bring the plague closer. It's a strange, tense relationship, trust built on fear, hope, and centuries of superstition. And the stories, oh, the stories they tell. Some believe carrying a dead toad in your pocket could ward off the plague, thinking that the creature's corpse absorbs the disease or repels spirits. Others think that whipping themselves in the streets, flogging their own flesh with strips of leather, will earn God's mercy, a brutal form of penance that doubles as a public display of faith. You might chuckle quietly at these oddities, but you know they're serious to the people who practice them. It's the medieval version of aromatherapy, except with a slightly higher chance of accidental poisoning. These rituals, these objects, and these beliefs are all part of a desperate attempt to impose order on chaos, to find a sense of control in a universe that feels increasingly unpredictable. Fear here is like the smoke from 100 chimneys. You breathe it in whether you want to or not. It's woven into the very fabric of daily life, shaping every decision, every conversation, every prayer. It unites communities in a shared dread, but also divides them, fomenting suspicion of outsiders, of heretics, of anyone who doesn't display the right signs of faith. Sometimes fear leads to violence, accusations of witchcraft or heresy that spiral into lynchings or mass exoduses. You sense it in the hurried whispers in the marketplace, in the hurried crossing of streets when someone coughs on a busy day, in the way neighbors eye each other with suspicion, waiting for the next sign of divine wrath. But even in a world so heavy with fear, people still reach for one another. Their prayers, their charms, their superstitions are attempts to hold on to hope. fragile threads in a stormy sky. And beyond the rituals and objects, there are bonds that keep life moving, families clinging to each other, tradesmen sharing warnings or cures, neighbors exchanging small tokens of protection. These connections are surprisingly human, tender, fragile, and resilient in the face of chaos. They are what keep the heart beating, even when the fear feels overwhelming. And as the shadows lengthen and the night approaches, you realize that beneath all the superstitions and fears, beneath the chants and the warnings, there's a quiet, persistent belief that life, despite everything, is worth holding on to. It's a hope that somehow the divine and the human can coexist amid the chaos, that the fears, no matter how real, can be softened by faith, by community, by the simple act of reaching out. You carry these fears with you, not as weights, but as quiet reminders that even in the darkest darkness, there is a flicker of light, small, flickering, and fiercely alive. And beyond this shadowed world of superstitions and divine punishments, there lies a bridge to the next chapter, one where human bonds, love, and trust begin to weave a new kind of resilience. But for now, you stand amidst the smoke and whispers, knowing that in this ancient society, fear is as much a part of the landscape as the sun and the river. It's a silent, ever-present force, shaping lives, guiding prayers, and coloring the very fabric of existence. You notice how, despite the weight of fear and the harshness that colors every day, people still cling to one another with a quiet desperation, leaning not just for bread or warmth, but for the kind of comfort that only another heartbeat nearby can provide. It's in the way neighbors exchange a few words over a shared wall, their voices low but filled with a warmth that defies the gloom. It's in the small gestures, an offered cup of water, a hand pressed briefly on a shoulder in reassurance, small acts that stitch lives together in a fragile tapestry of community. Even when suspicion lurks beneath the surface, and the threat of illness hangs over every gathering, the ties that bind remain surprisingly resilient. You see people leaning into these bonds because in this world of uncertainty, it's the human connection that keeps the darkness at bay, even if just for a moment. Step into a typical household, and the scene expands, children playing on the dirt floor, their laughter muffled but genuine, while grandparents sit nearby, their faces lined with stories and worries. The family is both a sanctuary and a cage, an intricate weave of support, obligation, and sometimes frustration. Forget Netflix family drama here. Your cousin might literally sleep on the floor 2 feet away from you every single night, sharing a blanket, sharing a life, in a way modern families only read about in history books. The older generations pass down stories in hushed tones, their voices thick with nostalgia and caution, warning the young about the dangers lurking outside, about the importance of loyalty and obedience. Family ties are the backbone of survival, but they can also feel like shackles, obligations to marry, to produce heirs, to carry on traditions that seem as unbreakable as the stone walls of their homes. And yet, amid these bonds, there's an undeniable sense of camaraderie. You witness neighbors helping each other harvest a field, sharing a loaf of bread or a handful of dried figs. Someone might lean over a fence, whispering advice about a remedy they've tried, perhaps a mixture of crushed mint and crushed hopes, hoping it'll stave off sickness. Here, friendship isn't built on social media likes or weekend outings. It's forged in the daily grind, in shared worries and small acts of kindness. And in these moments, you sense the deep-rooted understanding that even in the face of death and disease, humans are remarkably good at finding reasons to smile, to joke, and to hope. Romance, of course, is no less complicated. You might see a young couple exchanging furtive glances in a crowded marketplace, their eyes flickering with promises unspoken. Maybe they exchange small gifts, an embroidered cloth, a sweetmeat, hidden beneath layers of suspicion and social expectation. Promises of marriage are made with a mixture of excitement and dread, often sealed with a handshake or a quick kiss behind a cloth curtain. Tinder swipes? Here, it's a glance across a smoky tavern, and maybe the promise of a dance if the fiddle doesn't break. Love is as much about secrecy as it is about longing, and every stolen moment feels like a small act of rebellion against the chaos surrounding them. The social hierarchy shapes these relationships just as much as it shapes the city streets. Nobles and wealthy merchants look down upon laborers, their status marked by fine clothes, jewelry, and the way they carry themselves. Clerigos, priests and scribes, hold a special place, respected but also feared, for they are seen as mediators between the gods and mortals. You, as a healer or a healer's assistant, are somewhere in between, respected by some, mistrusted by others. You're never fully trusted because your work is intertwined with magic and divine favor, but you're also essential, an unavoidable part of community life. Respect and suspicion walk hand in hand like shadows at sunset. And then there are the community rituals, big, messy, sensory-rich gatherings that reinforce social bonds. You can't miss the processions, brass bands, drums pounding, people dressed in their finest robes, the air thick with the smell of roasted meat and sweetbread. The streets fill with the sound of flutes and tambourines as crowds sing hymns or chant in unison, their voices rising over the hum of conversation. At festivals, everyone wears colorful clothes, their heads crowned with wreaths of flowers or garlands of olive leaves, their faces painted with chalk or ash, an act of both celebration and protection. During funerals, the mood shifts, but the sense of community remains strong. Mourners walk slowly, holding hands, their voices softly singing laments, their fingers brushing over the carved stones of tombs, their tears mingling with incense smoke that spirals upward. You feel the heat of the fires and the coolness of the wine as people toast the dead, whispering prayers over bread and water, trying to appease the spirits or the gods who might be angry. But of course, social life isn't without its tensions. Rivalries simmer beneath the surface, disputes over land or inheritance, jealousies born out of favoritism, or accusations of witchcraft that can turn friends into enemies overnight. You hear the whispered gossip in the marketplace, who's sleeping with whom, whose crop failed, whose child was caught sneaking into forbidden parts of the city. Sometimes these rumors escalate into accusations, fingers pointed, voices raised in anger, fists clenched, and the whole community watching with bated breath. Public punishments are community events, half justice and half twisted entertainment, where the guilty are shamed in front of everyone, their crimes laid bare, under the open sky, sometimes whipped or exiled, sometimes just publicly humiliated. It's a brutal form of social control, but also a way to reinforce the fragile bonds of order amid chaos. And through it all, you see how the social hierarchy influences every interaction. Nobles and priests might look down on you, but they also need your knowledge, your blessings, your protection. A high-ranking official might pay you a visit, eyes wary but respectful, seeking a cure or a blessing, while at the same time keeping a watchful eye on your every move, unsure whether you're a divine instrument or a potential threat. You might be invited to a feast where the rich indulge in roasted lamb, sweet wines, and honeyed pastries, their laughter ringing over the clatter of cups. Or you might be pulled into a quarrel over a parcel of land, voices rising, accusations flying, the tension thick enough to cut with a blade. You sense it, how intertwined everyone's lives are, how fragile the bonds that hold the social fabric together can be, yet how fiercely they cling to their place in the hierarchy. And amid all this, you too are part of the social web. Your role is not just to heal or to judge, but to navigate these complex relationships. Sometimes a confidant, sometimes a pawn, often both at once. Your presence sparks whispers, some respectful, some suspicious. People might whisper that you're blessed by the gods or cursed by them, that your remedies are divine or dangerous. They look at you with a mixture of hope and trepidation, wondering whether you're a protector or a threat. You can't help but notice the subtle ways they express their trust or their fear. An awkward handshake, a quick bow, a prayer murmured when you're not looking. These tiny moments reveal the delicate dance of social bonds, tender threads woven through the chaos, holding communities together with a fragile human grace. And yet, in this world of suspicion and superstition, humor still finds its place. You might overhear a farmer joking that his cow's strange mooing is a sign of divine displeasure, unless it's just the wind, or perhaps the cow's new haircut. Or hear a merchant complain that the local healer's remedy turned his beard green. But at least it's good for warding off evil spirits, he laughs, rubbing his chin. People find ways to laugh, even in the face of death and disease, because humor is a kind of rebellion. A reminder that despite everything, the human spirit still refuses to be broken. And of course, some curious facts linger in the background, like the belief that sneezing at a wedding is a sign of good luck, or that beating a drum loudly during a ritual can chase away malevolent spirits. Public punishments, with their mix of justice and spectacle, are almost like medieval reality TV, something to watch, something to fear, something to remember. The community's beliefs and practices are bizarre, wonderful, and sometimes downright funny, woven into every aspect of daily life. As you stand in this web of human connection, you realize that despite the fears and the hierarchies, life is sustained by these bonds. They are what keep the city alive, what turn strangers into friends, what transform grief into shared memory. They're the threads that hold the chaos together, fragile, yet fiercely resilient. And even in a world haunted by shadows of disease and divine punishment, these bonds remind you that above all, human connection remains the most enduring force, more powerful than any plague, more enduring than any hierarchy, and ultimately what makes life worth living in this ancient, tumultuous world. And as the evening falls and the streets quiet down, you carry the warmth of these bonds with you, knowing that no matter how brutal or uncertain the days, it's the simple act of leaning on each other that keeps hope alive. Because in the end, even in the darkest times, the human heart beats strongest when it's connected, fragile, fierce, and beautifully human. As you settle into the modest table before you, the first thing that catches your eye is the uneven surface. A rough, wooden plank, scarred by years of use, covered with a faded cloth that's seen better days. The faint glow of oil lamps flickers across the room, casting shadows that dance like whispers on the walls. The aroma rises slowly, an inviting medley of warm broth, salty dried fish, and the faint, sweet hint of honeyed dates. It's a scent that awakens your appetite, stirring memories of simpler times and the promise of sustenance. You can almost taste the broth, thin but flavorful, infused with herbs plucked fresh from the market, a mixture of cumin, coriander, and a dash of mustard seed, all simmered down to a comforting, earthy essence. Nearby, a loaf of coarse bread, cracked and crusty, waits to be torn open, revealing a dense, chewy interior, perfect for scooping up the pottage or crumbling into a piece of aged cheese. Utensils are minimal, perhaps a wooden spoon, a dull knife, and a handful of small, battered trenches of bread serving as plates. You might even find a simple bowl of water nearby for washing your hands, an essential ritual to clear away the dirt of the day, to prepare you for the act of eating that's both a necessity and a small ceremony. Today's menu reflects the ordinary rhythm of life. The staple is pottage, a thick, vegetable-laden stew made from lentils, onions, and carrots, seasoned with wild herbs. It's the kind of meal that sustains a family through lean times, hearty but humble, its ingredients often borrowed from the land's bounty or what's left over from yesterday's harvest. On days of abundance, you might indulge in a slice of salted meat, perhaps a bit of dried lamb or beef, its surface cracked and salty enough to make your lips pucker. On other days, eggs from a neighbour's coop are added to the mix, their yolks bright and rich, a small luxury amid austerity. The drinks are simple, perhaps a weak beer, cloudy and lightly bitter, or water drawn from a well that tastes faintly of earth and moss. No fancy wines here, just the kind that keeps you hydrated, and maybe a splash of vinegar to sharpen the taste. If you happen to be among the elite or in a more festive setting, the scene changes subtly. A roasted bird, perhaps a pheasant or a goose, sits on a platter, its skin golden and fragrant, sprinkled with a pinch of exotic spices like cinnamon or pepper. Fruit, dried figs, dates, or a few pomegranate seeds add a splash of colour and sweetness, their aroma mingling with the smoky scent of charred meat. The vessels are finer, made of glazed clay or even metal, and the drinks richer, an aged wine or spiced ale served in small cups carved from stone or decorated clay. But even in grander feasts, the core remains, food as a ritual, a language of status, a way to mark the moments when life pauses, if only briefly, from its relentless grind. Before any bite is taken, a small prayer or offering is made, an invocation to the gods for blessing, a plea for abundance, a moment of gratitude. Hands are washed carefully in a basin of cool water, the ritual grounding you in the act of nourishment, reminding you that what you eat is a gift from the land and the divine alike. You might observe the order of service, elders eating first, their plates filled with the choicest cuts, children last, their small hands eager but tentative. Portions are measured, controlled, a silent acknowledgement of scarcity and respect. Sometimes a fast or a day of abstinence is observed, where only fish or vegetables are permitted, a reminder of spiritual discipline woven into daily life. In this world, the table is more than just a place to eat. It's a stage where social status is displayed, where scarcity sharpens the senses, and where every morsel carries meaning. You notice how a piece of bread torn with care speaks of humility, while a lavish platter of spiced meat declares wealth. Waste is minimal, leftovers are reused, bones boiled for broth, scraps given to animals or dried for later use. It's a cycle of necessity and reverence, where even the simplest meal becomes a small act of survival and identity. The hunger itself seems to sharpen the senses, making each flavor more vivid, each aroma a reminder of life's fragile abundance. And when the last crumb is eaten, the scene doesn't end, it simply shifts. The city outside the door begins to hum with activity once more. The markets close, their stalls emptied but filled with the memory of fresh bread and ripe fruit. The streets fill with the sounds of laughter, the strum of a lute, and the clatter of glasses. After all, after the last bite, the city seeks something else: music, dance, a moment of levity against the darkening night. You carry the warmth of the meal with you, knowing that in this ancient world, it's not just sustenance that keeps life moving, but the rituals, the shared moments, and the simple act of breaking bread together that truly nourish the soul. The air is thick with the scent of warm beer, malted, slightly sour, and the dampness of sawdust spilled on the tavern floors, now settling into the corners like a secret kept too long. Somewhere nearby, a faint melody drifts out, an old lute plucked unevenly, its strings trembling, with a song that's more felt than understood. You can hear the murmur of voices rising, dipping and rising again, as laughter bubbles over the clink of cups and the scratch of a dice rolling across a rough wooden table. It's the kind of sound that makes you lean in a little, an almost imperceptible inclination to be part of this shared warmth, this fragile moment of joy amid the evening's quiet tension. Inside the tavern, the atmosphere is textured with the dust motes swirling in the flickering light. The benches are uneven and splintered, the bar a dark, polished slab scarred by years of passing hands and spilled ale. Someone is playing a game of dice, an ancient gamble, its outcome as uncertain as the future itself. The dice bounce like promises, some lucky, some not, and land with a soft thud that echoes a little too much, like a bolito that's overdue. The players' voices rise and fall, a chorus of hopes and disappointments, punctuated by the occasional hearty laugh or groan. A woman sings a tune off-key, but with a voice full of warmth, her words lost amid the raucous, yet somehow it feels like a prayer, an act of defiance against the darkness outside. The melody is simple, yet it pierces the night like a thread stitched into the fabric of their collective story, reminding you that even in the midst of hardship, the human spirit finds its way to sing. From the corner, a group of musicians, an alaoud, a rebecca, a flute, strum and blow with a casual rhythm, their melodies weaving through the smoke and chatter. You find your feet moving naturally, stepping into the circle of simple dance, feet shuffling in a slow, unrefined pattern, a dance that doesn't bother with precision, but celebrates the shared beat. The sweat on your brow is a mixture of effort and joy, a reminder that even the simplest movements can challenge the shadows that creep at the edge of the night. You notice how the crowd's bodies sway, how the music binds them together, a fragile net holding back the fears that lurk outside the walls. It's an act of courage, this dance, an offering to the dark that life continues, that laughter persists, that the night, no matter how long, will be filled with something brighter than despair. As the evening deepens, the scene shifts to the open-air stage of a nearby square. Here, a simple tableau unfolds, actors dressed in rough cloth, their costumes stitched from scraps, their faces painted with exaggerated features. They perform a morality play, a moral tale about virtue and vice, hope and greed, in a language that's both familiar and distant. The audience, a mixture of villagers and travelers, watches with rapt attention, some chuckling at the Tosca costumes, others silent in reverence. The actors speak in rhythmic chants, their voices rising and falling according to the script, punctuated by the crackle of the nearby fire. The smell of burning herbs and resin drifts over the crowd, mingling with the faint aroma of roasted nuts and fresh bread brought from the marketplace. The play is more than entertainment. It's a communal mirror reflecting their hopes and fears, their moral struggles and fleeting joys. Across the city, as night falls further, a different kind of ritual begins, one whispered about in hushed tones and shadowed corners, the flagellants. Cloaked figures march slowly through the streets, scourges in hand, their steps deliberate and heavy. Their sermons, delivered in a voice that cuts through the evening's quiet, speak of penance, of divine wrath, of the need for humility. You observe, your gaze steady but respectful as they pass, some watching with curiosity, others with a mixture of reverence and suspicion. The crowd gathers at a distance, a mixture of awe and unease, knowing that these acts are both a plea for mercy and a spectacle of human vulnerability. The superstitions that dictate when to dance, when to silence, when to pray, hang thick in the air, like the scent of burnt herbs, reminding everyone that the boundary between the sacred and the profane is fragile and often blurred. From your vantage point, you catch a quick glance from a local healer, eyes filled with a mixture of respect and quiet fear. Someone approaches, seeking a word, a blessing, a warning, a piece of advice. You gently touch the edge of the building's wall, as if to ward off ill omens, whispering a quick blessing or a calming phrase. Even in these moments of collective celebration, your role is etched into the fabric of the city's rhythm, an invisible thread connecting the joy of the crowd to the underlying currents of caution and reverence. The night is alive with contrasts, the warmth of shared laughter and the chill of distant bells that mark the hours. The shadows flicker like secrets, hiding as much as revealing. You see the faces of the revelers, some illuminated by joy, others marked by worry, each caught in their own dance with the darkness. The music, the movement, the silent prayers, they all serve as acts of resilience, defying the night's quiet threat. Here, beneath the stars and the flickering lanterns, the city's heartbeat is a complex rhythm, one that celebrates life's fleeting glimmers amid the shadows of mortality. And when the last song fades, the lanterns flicker low, and the crowd begins to drift home, you realize that these moments of leisure, these shared rituals, are more than mere escapism. They are the city's way of breathing, of affirming that despite everything, life persists. Between a dance and a prayer, the city whispers, everything begins and ends, but the human spirit keeps turning, always ready to dance again with the dark. You find yourself standing at the edge of this quiet world's beginning and end, the gentle threshold where life's fragile thread is woven with care. It all starts in the dim glow of a single lamp, flickering softly as a midwife wraps a newborn in coarse cloth, whispering prayers that mingle with the faint scent of milk and damp earth. The tiny face, pink and trembling, takes its first breath. A tiny chime in the vast silence of the night, a silent promise that life, despite its fleeting nature, is a miracle repeated every dawn. You watch as the small hand clenches briefly, grasping at the air, an instinct, a hope, a whisper of eternity in a moment so delicate it might shatter with a single breath. In the quiet of this world, the promise of life is made in the softness of water, the roughness of cloth, and the hushed prayers that float like whispers of comfort, echoing through generations. Then comes the day of promises, an engagement sealed with a simple blessing at the door of a humble church. Hands joined, a ribbon tied, bread and salt exchanged, symbols of union and sustenance shared in the community's watchful gaze. The music, a brief, sweet tune, rises as a witness to the union, a sound that lingers like a gentle embrace. The faces around you, familiar and kind, become part of this story, their presence a quiet testament that life's continuity depends on these small, sacred moments. Time flows into work and inheritance. The tools, an old polished sickle, a carved wooden box, pass from hand to hand, carrying stories of toil and tradition. Advice from elders, their voices thick with wisdom, echoes softly, reminders of craft, of the lessons etched into the grain of a worn bench that bears the weight of years. These objects, like memories, are passed on, each scar, each crack, telling its own silent story of perseverance. Yet, life's gentle rhythm is interrupted by illness, the ache, the fever, the silent weight of despair. You stand by a simple bed, the patient's hand trembling as it's anointed with oil, murmuring prayers that blend with quiet tears. When the pestilence comes, the rites are hurried, the silence heavy with unspoken fears. No time for elaborate ceremonies, only the urgent touch, the whispered hope that perhaps this prayer will be enough. You, as healer or witness, walk the line between care and helplessness, your presence a small act of dignity amid the overwhelming forces of nature and fate. And then, the inevitable, farewells. The graveyard is quiet, a few simple shovels digging into cold, familiar earth. A bell tolls, slow and deep, as a procession moves quietly through the streets, the casket a humble vessel, holding what remains. The scent of Sarah melts into the air, mingling with the faint aroma of flowers, while soft prayers are offered. Names spoken aloud, remembered over a simple mound. Sometimes, in times of crisis, entire rows of bodies are laid to rest together, their shared fate a silent testament to community and loss, a reminder that death is woven into the fabric of this life, as inevitable as the dawn and dusk. And yet in this cycle there is no despair but a gentle acceptance, an understanding that each beginning is a promise, each ending a part of the ongoing dance of existence. Icons of humility, skulls painted on walls, images of the dance macabre reminding all that life's grandeur is fleeting and that humility is the true virtue. The sacred texts remind us there is a time to be born and a time to die, as if the universe itself whispers that these are the natural contours of our days, the rhythm that guides us all. As you close your eyes at the end of this journey, the world's breath slows and a quiet warmth remains. The city continues to breathe, its heartbeat steady, its stories unfolding unseen. The simple act of a breath, a heartbeat, a prayer. These are the enduring notes of a symphony that plays softly in the background of every life. Now, as the darkness deepens and your eyelids grow heavy, you feel the gentle weight of the night settling around you. The city, the memories, the cycle all continue beyond your sleep. And in this quiet, you find a kind of peace. The understanding that life is a fleeting gift, fragile yet fiercely beautiful, and that every dawn is a small miracle worth embracing. Between the fading glow of the candle and the slow rhythm of your breath, you are invited to rest now, trusting that the quiet stillness will cradle you, just as it has for generations before. When you finally drift into sleep, remember, the city continues, and you too, in your own quiet way, are part of its endless dance, born, loved and softly laid to rest, awaiting the dawn of another day.